Well, the race is on to restore state funding that has been pulled from North Star Health Alliance, threatening 2 North Country hospitals, a nursing home, and 1,700 employees. North Star, the group that runs Claxton Hepburn Medical Center, Carthage Area Hospital, and Meadowbrook Terrace near West Carthage, needs to find ways to meet next week's payroll of $5.5 million. The funding North Star is relying on, $84 million. That was agreed upon back in January with the state. It provides cash flow to a hospital when changes are happening with the healthcare model that it runs, and that's what's happening in this situation. Remember that Claxton is splitting into a critical access hospital and a behavioral health hospital. Now, the state says that it's cutting the funding because North Star needs to answer some questions. More on that in a moment. So the funding cutoff is now a crisis, and local officials are rallying together to find a way to restore that funding. Meanwhile, it has been a fight at the top. Congresswoman Elise Stefanik calling on Governor Hochul and the state health department to release the promised funding, saying Hochul is weaponizing the Department of Health, blocking funding to close a hospital in her congressional district. Hochul's office firing back today, saying those claims are baseless, and says because of Stefanik, 57,000 North Country residents are losing health insurance. Instead of Stefanik cared about patient care, she would join the governor in restoring health care cuts Republicans made recently in Washington. So back to why the funding is being cut off. The governor's office saying North Star has failed to provide basic information, so the state knows how taxpayer money is being spent by that hospital group. 7 News reporter Lexi Bruning continues our reporting now, including hearing from North Star CEO Rich Duvall, who says his group is and will continue to provide information that the state is looking for to keep the hospitals open and 1,700 people on the job.
It's critical at this point.
Claxton Hepburn Medical Center in Ogdensburg has been undergoing changes to its healthcare model. It's one of a few facilities run under North Star Health Alliance. To make that transition, the state and healthcare group came to an agreement as to how much financial support would be needed. That conversation happened face-to-face in January.
We felt very confident that the state and our representatives were clear on our request and that we would get access to that fund.
The agreement, $84 million. These payments show $57 million has been paid out, short by about $26 million. At risk, payroll for employees, which is $5.5 million every 2 weeks, paying nearly 1,700 people.
It would be the entire payroll. However, we are making progress every day by aggressively calling our payers, and our foundations have been incredibly supportive to do everything we can to ensure we make payroll next week.
7 News has learned the state is withholding funding, wanting more information about how the financial support is used. But officials say the state, quote, keeps moving the goalpost.
We believe we have substantially answered the questions from the Department of Health. There are constantly updates to the information, as you can imagine, from week to week and month to month. We've hired our audit firm to take over the communication with the Department of Health and provide that information to them.
The state tells 7 News it wants, quote, basic information from Carthage and Claxton Hepburn, including how state funding has already been spent, what 2024 audited financial statements look like, updated organizational charts, and salary information for the top 20 clinical and non-clinical employees. Locally, state lawmakers are pushing to make sure the facilities stay open.
We don't want to see any closures of facilities. We want to see the state honor its agreement and its commitment to see this transition all the way through. And then ultimately, we want to see these facilities succeed and continue to succeed in the communities that they are so important to.
As it draws feuding words from Stefanik and Hochul, Assemblyman Scott Gray didn't want it to become political.
My objective is to keep all of these facilities running and providing services to the community. That's number one. Number two is I'm certainly sensitive to everybody that's employed there, right? And that's so that is my focus right now.
Duvall says the facility will be self-sustaining once the transition is over. It just needs the agreed upon funding from the state to get there. Lexi Bruning, 7 News.